headline of the day. Moving on to the other big story that we are tracking. The Enforcement Directorate conducted search operations at two premises belonging to Edtech major Byju's and at the residence of CEO Byju Raveendran over FEMA violations. Byju's claims it was a routine exercise and it is business as usual at the company. For more on this, I'm joined by Parikshit Luthra on the broadcast. Parikshit, this is a massive development as far as Byju's is concerned. What can you tell us about the search and the nature of allegations?
Yes, that's right. The Enforcement Directorate is investigating violations of foreign funding laws by online education portal Byju's and its founder Raveendran Byju. The Enforcement Directorate has carried out searches at 3 locations in Bengaluru, 2 official premises and 1 residence connected to Raveendran Byju and the Byju's company as well. So what is the Enforcement Directorate actually looking at? After these searches were carried out, the Enforcement Directorate has said that a large number of incriminating documents and data has been discovered, which will now be verified. They are looking at the foreign direct investment to the tune of 28,000 crores, which has been received by Byju's company from 2011 to 2023. They're also looking at 9,754 crores, which has been invested abroad as overseas investment by Byju's, and 944 crores in the company's books, which has been marked as marketing and advertisement expenses. The ED has also noted that the company has not prepared financial statements since 2020, and it has not got its accounts audits done, which is mandatory, and therefore the genuineness of figures provided by the company is being verified. They also said that Raveendran Byju, the CEO and founder of the company, has been summoned for questioning a number of times, but he remains evasive and he's not prepared for questioning.
Right. Thank you, Parikshit, for getting us those updates. Meanwhile, these searches also indicate a wave of change for startups. My colleague Ritu Singh, who closely tracks the startup space, is joining us on the broadcast. Ritu, it is a very significant development. For the benefit of our viewers, could you help us understand what kind of impact is this going to have on the startup space?
Well, before I get to the wider impact for Byju's itself now, in response to the ED searches that took place today, Byju's in its statement to us said it is business as usual for Byju's and that nothing really gets impacted. They called it a routine nature of inquiry by the ED with regards to the FEMA, rules as far as those are concerned, and that they're confident in the integrity of their operations. They're cooperating with the authorities and are hopeful of an early resolution in the matter. But that said, these ED searches are actually coming at a very critical time because, as my colleague Shruti had reported earlier, the company is in the process of trying to raise a critical funding of about $200 to $500 million. Now, why does it need these funds? One, the company is trying to cut costs, turn profitable, and also because there have been reports that there have been pressure on the company to repay about $1.2 billion of term loans it raised, at least partially, that it raised in 2021. And that is because lenders have been concerned about the delays in the company filing its financial results for FY21-22, and now, of course, we're completed FY23 as well. And therefore, there were also talks about Byju's trying to refinance its loans at a higher price, even at a higher price to do so, at a similar valuation of $22 billion that the company was last valued at. Remember, this may also impact the company's attempt to take its brand Akash public, which it has received a board nod for, and it is in the process of finalizing bankers for to be able to take the company public. So we'll have to see how all of this plays out for the company. Given that it is such a large company, one of the largest edtech companies in the world, like I said, valued at $22 billion, these kind of searches are bound to have some impact. As far as the investor community is concerned, we'll have to see how they take it, whether it impacts sentiments, whether they turn more risk-averse or more cautious. But actually, to understand that, I am now joined by an industry veteran, Mohan Das Pai, who is the chairman of RN Capital as well. Mr. Pai, thank you very much for your time here on CNBC-TV18. You heard what my colleague Parikshit just told us about the ED searches. And of course, as I explained, this is coming at a critical time for the company as well. How do you think this impacts investor sentiment at a time when already there are enough and more macro headwinds?
Well, this is a private company, so you're not going to see an immediate impact because Byju will have to talk to his major investors communicate with them, show them the notices, and respond to the ED inquiry. Obviously, if you're a listed company, the impact will be immediate. There'll be some fear in the marketplace. But being a private company, you'll have to do all this. But the key issue that all these big startups should do is they must file their accounts on time. They must get their accounts audited. They must maintain all their records. They must respond to regulators who come and ask them for information. Because under the law, regulators have the right to ask for information, and people must respond. I think that governance will be a bigger concern for investors, because all this is a function of governance. I do wish Byju, as the largest startup in this country in terms of valuation, improves governance, brings in better practices, completes the audit. And Ritu, what saddens me is most of the listed startups delay their announcement of their quarterly results. All the big unicorns who listed, how many of them announced results? Your HDFC, Infosys, Reliance announced results. They must set standard. It seems to be a cultural issue with all these people.
Yeah. Sure. You know, the fact of the matter is the results have been delayed for more than 2 years, Mr. Pai. But more importantly, you said it's not a public company and therefore there's no public impact. But it is there are 70 investors in the company. Wouldn't it have a ripple effect as far as investor sentiment is concerned? Such a large company, all of 2022. Yes.
Ritu see, when you have private investors, you'll get on a call and explain everything to them, right? And you'll do it immediately. I'm sure Byju will get on a call and say that the ED has come. They've asked for all this information. We are in the process of giving it, and we will keep you appraised every week and fulfill it. And investors will do the due diligence, because most institutional investors understand these things happen. So that I'm not worried about that. I'm worried whether there is anything behind the ED's findings. Obviously, I do hope, and I'm sure Byju would have complied with the law and all that. So I think it's an important thing for Byju to prove and to provide documentation to investors that they abided the law and they have done everything which is right. And I'm sure he would have done that, because to take money out of this country and to invest, you have to go through the banking channels, and the banks ask for a lot of information. And I'm sure the banks would have done full due diligence. So, but I think the important thing is Byju, by delaying the accounts and delaying the release, laid themselves open to this kind of action. Because if you're a very large company, you don't file your accounts, you delay your audit, it creates suspicions about your accounts. And regulators will step in, right? If you're a listed company, imagine the action. Say we would have immediately acted, right?
I understand, Mr. Pai. I understand, Mr. Pai, but my question was, given that it is such a large company, and this is not the first hint of trouble at the company, if not in the larger ecosystem, at least for the investors that are invested in the Edtech companies, will it not make them question their decisions? Will it not make them more risk averse in this moment, when these kind of things are coming to light?
No, it will make them more risk averse in the sense they'll focus more on governance. Because they will be on the board, they will insist that the accounts are audited, accounts are released immediately, adequate information flow is there. I mean, I would blame the board too, right? Please remember, they are investors on Byju's board. What are they doing sitting on the board? Why they're not making sure the accounts are audited, accounts are released in time? They're also party to it, right? Because whenever large investors come, they have board rights. They have an agreement. And everything that the company does is subject to their approval. Budgets are subject to approval. Capital spending is subject to approval. Acquisitions have to go through the board. Everything would have gone through the board. That means all major investment decisions would have been approved by the board, and they're all party to it. So since they're a party to it, anything like this happening is that Byju will have to communicate, and the board has possibly to set up a committee to work with management to handle this to make sure the company remains kosher and goes on. You see, it's very different in a private company, Ritu. Yes, will new investors be very cautious and more cautious coming in? Yes. Will investors already in become more cautious and try to improve governance? Hope so. I think they should do it. But Ritu, we have a bigger issue in India.
A more positive outcome to come out of this.
Ritu, we have a bigger issue in India which I want to raise. I do wish regulatory agencies like the CBI, Income Tax and ED stop giving public releases whenever they ask for information or go visit people's places. They must visit or conduct the so-called raids only at the last resort in case they don't give information, and they must not do it immediately and not issue press releases, oh, we went there. Because once you issue a press release, you have to make a statement. We searched, we found incriminating documents, we found this, we found this. They have to do that to justify the search, right? I wish they don't do that. And let them search, let them go, follow the law, and then if they find anything, file a charge sheet, and that can be made public. I think in India today, there are too many of these things happening where decent businesses' reputation could get tarnished. Because in the eyes of the Indian public, CBI visiting or income tax visiting and ED visiting is not a good thing. People think so, you've done something wrong immediately. It gets a negative image. It is not good for the country itself. So I hope government will listen and change the process. Nobody is saying don't follow the law, don't enforce the law. Please do that. But do it in an unoppressive manner.
Sure.
So they don't give undue publicity unless you have data and you file a charge sheet.
Well, that's a larger debate for another time, Mr. Pai, but thank you very much for your time here. We understand, of course, the ED allegation, it is not a charge sheet yet. These are just initial findings. We'll have to see how the case evolves, but thank you very much for your time and for explaining how this could potentially impact the startup community and how investors would perhaps focus more on governance here onwards. Thank you very much, Mr. Pai, and Archana, on that note, it's back to you.
Right. Thank you, Ritu, for that conversation. It's time for a short break, but coming up next, unseasonal